Hi Em. I thought it'd be time for another story, so I was having a flick through the Treasury of Fairy Tales and came across one which I haven't read before, and you probably haven't heard it, called The Red Shoes. So this will be something new for both of us. Right, The Red Shoes by Hans Christian Andersen. Once there was a little girl who was delicate and lovely, but very poor. In the summer she had to go barefoot, and in the winter she had to wear wooden shoes that rubbed against her poor little ankles and made them red and sore. In the same village there lived an old widow whose husband had been a shoemaker, and she was sewing a pair of shoes from scraps of red material. She did her very best, but the shoes looked a bit clumsy, though they were sewn with kindness. They were meant for the poor little girl, whose name was Karen. Oh, isn't that sweet? The old shoemaker's widow making Karen a pair of shoes. Now on that very day that her mother was to be buried, Karen was given the red shoes. Though they weren't the proper colour for mourning, she had no others. So she put them on, raggedly dressed, bare-legged, and with red shoes on her feet she walked behind the pauper's coffin. A big old-fashioned carriage drove by. In it sat an old lady. She noticed the little girl and felt so sorry for her that she went at once to the minister and spoke to him. "Let me have that little girl, and I shall be good to her and bring her up." Karen thought it was because of her new red shoes that the old lady had taken a fancy to her, but the old lady declared that the shoes looked frightful and had to be thrown into the stove and burned. Karen was dressed in nice clean clothes and taught to read and to sew. Everyone agreed that she was a very pretty child, but the mirror said, "You are more than pretty, you are beautiful." Oh, so there's a mirror that talks. It happened that the Queen was making a journey throughout the country, and she had her daughter, the little princess, with her. Everywhere people streamed to see them. When they arrived at a castle near Karen's village, the little girl followed the crowd out there. Looking out at one of the great windows of the castle was the little princess. So that people could see her, she was standing on a little stool. She had no crown on her head, but she wore a very pretty white dress and the loveliest red shoes made from Morocco. They were certainly much prettier than the ones the old shoemaker's widow had made for Karen, but even they had been red shoes, and to Karen nothing else in the world was so desirable. Karen became old enough to be confirmed. She was to have a new dress and new shoes for this solemn occasion. The old lady took her to the finest shoemaker in a nearby town, and he measured her little foot. Glass cabinets filled with the most elegant shoes and boots covered the walls of his shop, but the old lady's eyesight was so poor that she didn't get much out of looking at the display. Karen did. Between two pairs of boots stood a pair of red shoes just like the one the princess had worn. Oh, how beautiful they were! The shoemaker said they had been made for the daughter of a count, but they hadn't fitted her. "I think they are painted leather," remarked the old lady. They shine." "Yes, they shine," sighed Karen as she tried them on. They fitted the child, and the old woman bought them. Had she known that they were red, she wouldn't have, because it was not proper to wear red shoes when you were being confirmed, but her eyesight was failing. Poor woman. She had not seen the colour. Everyone in the church looked at Karen's feet, and as she walked towards the altar, on the walls of the church hung paintings of the former ministers and their wives who were buried there. They were portrayed wearing black with white ruffs round their necks. Karen felt that even they were staring at her red shoes. When the old bishop laid his hands on her head and spoke of the solemn promise she was about to make, of her covenant with God to be a good Christian, her mind was not on his words. The ritual music was played on the organ. The old cantor sang, and the sweet voices of the children could be heard, but Karen was thinking of her red shoes. By afternoon, everyone had told the old lady about the colour of Karen's shoes. She was very angry and scolded the girl, telling her how improper it was to have worn red shoes in church, and that she must remember always to wear black ones, even if she had to put on an old pair. Next Sunday, Karen was to attend communion. She looked at her black shoes, and she looked at her red shoes. Then she looked at her red shoes once more and put them on. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful day. The old lady and Karen took the path across the fields, and their shoes got a bit dirty. At the entrance to the church stood an old invalid soldier leaning on a crutch. He had a marvellously long beard that was red with touches of white in it. He bowed low towards the old lady and asked her permission to wipe the dust off her feet. Karen put her little foot forward too. "What pretty little dancing shoes," said the soldier, tapping him on the sole. He added, "Remember to stay on her feet for the dance." The old lady gave the soldier a penny, and she and Karen entered the church. Again everyone looked at Karen's feet, even the people in the paintings on the wall. When she knelt in front of the altar and the golden cup was lifted to her lips, she thought only of the red shoes and saw them reflected in the wine. She did not join in the singing of the psalms, and she forgot to say the Lord's Prayer. The coachman had come with the carriage to drive them home from the church. The old lady climbed into Karen and Karen was about to follow, when the old soldier who was standing nearby remarked, "Look at those pretty dancing shoes." His words made her take a few dancing steps. Once she had begun, her feet would not stop. It was as if the shoes had taken command of them. She danced around the corner of the church. Her will was not her own. The coachman jumped off the carriage and ran after her. When he finally caught up with her, he grabbed her and lifted her up from the ground. But her feet kept on dancing in the air, even after he managed to get her into the carriage. The poor old woman was kicked nastily while she and the coachman took Karen's shoes off her feet so she could stop dancing. When they got home, the red shoes were put away in a cupboard, but Karen could not help sneaking in to look at them. The old lady was very ill. The doctor had come and said she would not live much longer. She needed careful nursing and constant care, and who else but Karen ought to give it to her? In the town there was a great ball, and Karen had been invited to go. She looked at the old lady who was going to die anyway, and then she glanced at her red shoes. To glance was no sin. Then she put them on. That too did no great harm. But she went to the ball. She danced, and when she wanted to dance to the left, the shoes danced to the right, and when she wanted to dance up the ballroom floor, the shoes danced right down the stairs and out into the street. Dance she did, out through the city gates and into the dark forest. Something shone through the trees. She thought it was the moon because it had a face, but it was not. It was the old soldier with the red beard. He nodded to her and exclaimed, "Look what beautiful dancing shoes." Terrified, she tried to pull off her shoes. She tore her stockings, but the shoes stayed on. They had grown fast to her feet. Dance she did, and dance she must, over the fields and the meadows, in the rain and the sunshine, by night and by day, but it was more horrible and frightening at night when the world was dark. She danced through the gates of the churchyard, but the dead did not dance with her. They had better things to do. She wanted to sit down on the pauper's grave where the bitter herbs grew. But for her there was no rest. The church door was open and she danced towards it. But an angel dressed in white, who had on his back great wings that reached almost to the ground, barred her entrance. His face was stern and grave, and in his hand he held a broad, shining sword. "You shall dance," he said, "dance in your red shoes until you become pale and thin. Dance till the skin on your face turns yellow and clings to your bones as if you were a skeleton. Dance, you shall, from door to door. And when you pass a house where proud and vain children live, there you shall knock on the door so that they will see you and fear your fate. Dance, you shall dance, dance." "Mercy!" screamed Karen, but heard not what the angel answered, for her red shoes carried away down through the churchyard, over the meadows, along the highways, through the lanes, always dancing. One morning she danced past a house that she knew well. From inside she heard psalms being sung. The door opened and a coffin decked with flowers was carried out. The old lady who had been so kind to her was dead. Now she felt that she was forsaken by all of mankind and cursed by God's angels. Dance she must, and dance she did. The shoes carried her across fields and meadows, through nettles and briars, and tore at her feet so they bled. One morning she danced across the lonely heath until she came to a solitary cottage. Here she knew the executioner lived. With her fingers she tapped to the windows. Come out," she called. "I cannot come inside, for I must dance." The executioner opened his door and came outside. When he saw Karen, he said, "Do you know who I am? I am the one who cuts off the heads of evil men, and I can feel my axe beginning to quiver now." "Do not cut off my head," begged Karen, "for then I should not be able to repent, but cut off my feet." She confessed her sins, and the executioner cut off her feet, and the red shoes danced away with them into the dark forest. Ooh, blimey, she had her feet cut off. The executioner carved a pair of wooden feet for her and made her a pair of crutches. He taught her the psalm that a penitent sings. She kissed the hand that had guided the axe and went away. Oh dear, poor Karen. Now I have suffered enough because of those red shoes, thought Karen. I should go to the church now and be among other people. But when she walked up to the door of the church, the red shoes danced in front of her, and in horror she fled. And all during that week she felt sad and cried many a bitter tear. When Sunday came, she thought, now I have suffered and struggled. long enough, I'm just as good as many of those who are sitting and praying in the church right now, and who dare throw their heads back with pride." This reasoning gave her courage, but she came no further than the gate of the churchyard. There were the shoes dancing in front of her. In terror she fled, but this time she really repented in the depths of her heart. She went to the minister's house and begged to be given work. She said that she did not care about the wages, but she only wanted a roof over her head and enough to eat. The minister's wife hired the poor crippled girl because she felt sorry for her. Karen was grateful that she had been given a place to live, and she worked hard. In the evening, when the minister read from the Bible, she sat and listened thoughtfully. The children were fond of her, and she played with them, but when they talked of finery and being beautiful like a princess, she would sadly shake her head. When Sunday came, everyone in the household got ready for church, and they asked her to go with them. Poor Karen's eyes filled with tears. She sighed and glanced toward her crutches. When the others had gone, she went into a little room that was so small that a bed and a chair were all it could hold. She sat down and began to read from her psalm book. The wind carried the music from the church organ down to her, and she lifted her tear-stained face and whispered, "Oh God, help me." Suddenly the sunlight seemed doubly bright, and an angel of God stood before her. He was the same angel who with his sword had barred her entrance to the church, but now he held a rose branch covered with flowers. With this he touched the low ceiling of the room, and it rose high into the air, and where he had touched it, a golden star shone. He touched the walls, and they widened. Karen saw the organ. She saw the old paintings of the minister and their wives, and there were the congregation holding their psalm books in front of them and singing. The church had come to the poor girl in her little narrow chamber, or maybe she had come to the church. Now she sat among the others, and when they had finished singing the psalm, they looked up and saw her. Someone whispered to her, "It's good that you came, Karen." "This is His mercy," she replied. The great organ played, and the voices of the children in the choir mingled sweetly with it. The clear, warm sunshine streamed through the window. The sunshine filled Karen's heart till it so swelled with peace and happiness that it broke. Her soul flew on a sunbeam up to God. And up there, no one asked her about the red shoes. So there you go, the red shoes. I'd always heard of it, or I'd heard of it for a long time, but I'd never really known what it was about. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Speak to you soon, honey. Mwah, mwah. Love you. Mwah.